Nigerian government continues to allow the killing of Christians, the USA will immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria. We're going to do things to Nigeria that Nigeria is not going to be happy about and may very well go into that now disgraced country, guns are blazing, to completely wipe out the Islamic terrorists who are committing these horrible, horrible atrocities. I'm hereby instructing our Department of War to prepare for possible action. If we attack, it will be fast, vicious, and sweet, just like the terrorist thugs attack our cherished Christians.
All right. There we have it. President Trump doing what President Trump does. We got some people here. AC, good morning, and Lucas, good morning. Good to see you guys. That's a little follow-up from what we talked about a few weeks back. The Nigerian persecution of Christians has continued to go on. It's been in the news. More and more people are starting to recognize this and bring it up. It's actually been a pretty big story since we last talked about it. And again, as I mentioned in my podcast then, it was, of all people, Bill Maher that brought this to everyone's attention. So good for you, Bill Maher. You used your microphone. You stumbled into something really positive and good for the country. So, and that's, like I said, that's what Trump has done, is he's declared Nigeria a country of particular concern, which means we have options economically and, as he's saying, militarily. I really seriously doubt that Trump is going to go in and put boots on the ground, but this is what President Trump does. He uses his bully pulpit. He uses his world stage to bargain, to deal, to leverage. And he has the ultimate leverage of the American military. He can go in. We can go into Nigeria anytime and start taking out those Muslim terrorists, like he called them what they are. And the government of Nigeria knows it, because they've seen what he did in Iran, and they've seen what everybody knows what the U.S. military can do. So this is Trump, like I said, doing what he does best. He puts out these threats, and the Nigerian government is sitting up and taking notice. They know that he just might be crazy enough to do it. And that's what you want. That's what you want in a leader. That's what will solve situations like this. Strongly worded letters are not going to do it. So let's see. Yeah, Nicki Minaj, the rapper, who surprised me praising the president. Yeah, I saw that too. I've seen that from her. As weird as she comes off and as ditzy and dumb as she comes off, I think that's all an act. I've seen her talk about things like this before in a very serious mode that doesn't fit her persona, doesn't fit her character. So, but yeah, I mean, of two people to be responsible for bringing this to the public's attention is Bill Maher and Nicki Minaj. So, whether whoever's doing it, we can really be thankful that they are. So hopefully this means our prayers are being answered and heard by God. And of course they are. And for the people of Nigeria, I know that there's been more attacks. There was a viral video of which I probably should have shown, but of a pastor standing in a mass grave of Nigerians, a Nigerian pastor saying, "You can't tell us there's not a Christian persecution going on here," which some people are trying to do. A lot of people are trying to say, no, that's misinformation, whatever. For whatever reason, they don't want to acknowledge this. And I think it's just because there's just that anti-Christian bias that we all know. So, but it has gotten the world's attention. And for the Nigerian Christians, all they want is, and they have said this, all they want is for their persecution to be acknowledged. They just want to be seen. I don't know that they're necessarily asking to be rescued from it, because they know, like we all do, that this is a blessing. So that's kind of a recap. I just wanted to recap that what we talked about a month ago, because it was so important. And I had to confess to myself, I had been sent several notifications on this by the group, the Jay Sekulows group, and it just didn't register with me because it's way off into Africa, and I just I must not care, but I do care because these are my fellow Christians, and again, that's who our first obligation to. Who our first obligation to is our fellow believers in the universal body of Christ. So, and again, people have said, the Christians are not the only ones being persecuted. There's Muslims being persecuted, and that's true, but they're being persecuted by other Muslims, by the same people that are persecuting the Christians. So, and President Trump and America's not a Muslim nation. So we have, very little to say to Muslims who don't particularly like us, and for the most part, not all of them, of course, and a lot of Muslims have come to America and become Americans. But on this front, we have to speak up for our fellow Christians first and foremost. We have some new people here. Timothy. Good afternoon. Okay. We're morning here. So good to see you, Timothy Peters. Welcome, Timothy. So in transition to that, I wanted to talk about how this will apply to us as Christians, then thinking about what just happened in the elections on Tuesday, where the Democratic Party had a pretty good day and showed that the Democratic Party is not dead. And anyone who thought so doesn't know politics. But in a lot of ways, it was a bad day for the Republican Party, and for President Trump. But on the other hand, these were blue states, and the Democrats did well in blue states, which tells me, knowing the state of the Democratic Party, how radical it's become, that radicalism wasn't refuted by Democrats in these blue states. In New Jersey, the attorney general who threatened to kill his opponent won handily. So the Democratic Party just sent a signal that they're not going to de-radicalize. They're all in on the radical turn their party has taken. You really can't. I've been trying to come up with another way to take that. And it's pretty much obvious that that's what they've done. So we have a rival party. If you're conservative Republican, or if you're just conservative, independent, whatever, one of the major parties is full on embracing political violence, or I don't know if they're embracing it, but they're either turning a blind eye to it or they're tacitly endorsing it. And that means in the future, we can look forward to more political violence directed at us as conservatives, but more importantly, directed at us as Christians. And I wanted to show this video I ran across. As soon as I bring it up here, and it's where I got the title of this show today, and it's something from CBN, and I'll add to the stage here, and we will take a look at it.
America has seen a deadly surge in violence against churches this year. Places once considered safe for worship are too often becoming targets. In response to this dangerous trend, more church leaders are stepping up security. CBN's Paul Petit reports.
In Decatur, Arkansas, New Wine Ministry celebrates the Feast of Tabernacles, while 2 Vietnam veterans patrol the area outside.
that kind of an event will draw people that are curious and perhaps have some type of ulterior thing that they want to do to cause trouble.
Having security personnel is important to Pastor Vincent Xavier.
We don't want to walk in fear. We don't want to walk in, a fleshly or carnal way. But at the same time, we want to be careful and cautious because there are people and their lives matter, and they deserve to be having the right to fellowship where they can be at peace and not being worried about somebody coming in and doing some really horrible things, which we see everywhere.
It includes this attack in Michigan from September, when a man set a Mormon church on fire after killing 4 people and injuring 8 others. In August, 2 children were gunned down during a Catholic mass at a church in Minneapolis. A month before, 2 women were shot to death during a Baptist church service in Kentucky.
A lot of churches are starting to see that they better step up because rules have changed. It's a whole different game now, and the game is not something you can shy away from.
Okay. So now that struck a particular chord with me, seeing those patrols out on that church in Arkansas, because I have the same thing in a different way, but essentially the same thing where we have at my church. My church is a heavy military church. We're up here in North San Diego County by Camp Pendleton, which, if you don't know, is a huge Marine base here on the West Coast. So we have a lot of Marines at our church, Marines and former Marines. I guess you're always a Marine, right? And during our service, we have 5 or 6 combination of Marines and police officers standing guard, keeping an eye on things. The church I went to before, this very large church I've told you about, had a huge security team, armed security team, because we had received so many threats, and it's something that's a reality now. We've seen it into, like they said, whether it's Mormon church, whether it's Catholic church, Baptist church, synagogues. Here in San Diego County years ago, we had a synagogue attack. It's just a reality we face. And it's something we sign up for as Christians. But that, like the pastor was saying in Arkansas, yeah, we don't want to walk in fear. Too many people do walk in fear now. But those people that are at church, and if you remember a month ago, I praised the courage and the faith of the Nigerian Christians who were holding a service in the rubble of their church that had been attacked weeks before. And they didn't run and hide. They said, this is our church, and we're commanded to assemble. When the God says, don't forsake the assembling of the saints, he didn't put a exception there. He didn't say, well, unless you think it might be, you might get shot, or like here when we did such a disappointing, it was so disappointing during all the lockdowns with COVID that everybody stayed home because they might get sick. And, it's just, that's not what God said. He didn't say, just assemble when you think it's safe or when you know it's safe, because this life, this bodily, temporary condition you have here on earth in your body is the most important thing. No, we need to think eternally. The most important thing, and I told you about this in Hebrews 11 when it says, do not forsake the assembling of the saints, as is the habit of some, is because before that, in Hebrews 11, God lays out the entire plan of salvation. Why the law wasn't enough, and Moses wasn't enough, and the sacrifices wasn't enough. He had to come to earth in bodily form, send his only begotten son to be the sacrifice, the perfect sacrifice that was good enough. Therefore, do not forsake assembling together, as is the habit of some, because that's how important our assembling together is. That's the whole reason we assemble together, is because of this entire story that God has chosen to make us a part of. So, but one of the things he promises is when we do assemble together as a body, that we will be persecuted. We'll have trouble. People won't like it. People don't like people who are lost, people who are in darkness, don't like the fact that all these Christians are around shining light. Okay. People who are used to the darkness don't like people who shine light. Okay. So they will react negatively, and it's something that we can count on. So let's see, Lucas, what you got? The church in the West is under attack from a different front. They let us grow complacent to the point we forget what persecutions hurts. Yeah, we've had it good. Years ago, I went to Eastern Europe on a mission. And I mean, years and years ago, okay, back in college when the Iron Curtain was still up. And we kind of came in there with the attitude, we were based out of Austria, and we took these vans full of Bibles, which I'll have to tell the story of that again sometime soon. But we smuggled Bibles and Christian literature into Eastern Europe, which was under communist control. And we ministered to the Christians in these countries. And we came in with the attitude that we were going to minister to them, and we were the superior Christians and they were not, because we have all this freedom, access to all these resources. But the Christians back there were these poor Christians that needed our help. And that wasn't true. And they let us know that. They said, actually, we're praying for you. Thank you for praying for us, because we were praying for them and we told them that. But they said, well, we're praying for you, that you will, in the West, churches in the West will undergo persecution like we do. So you'll know really what it means to be a Christian. And that kind of blew us away. So for the past 40 years, Christians, and before that, Christians in persecuted countries have been praying for Christians in the West to undergo persecution, so we will be stronger in our faith. And like Peter and John did in Acts, rejoice that we've been found worthy to be persecuted for Christ, for our faith. And that's what the Nigerian Christians are saying too. They're not saying, hey, rescue us from this persecution and take us out. They said, no, we're here. And I think they're willing to, it seems like they're willing to die for the faith. But the one thing they want everyone to know is they don't want their sacrifice to go unnoticed. They are really asking the West to acknowledge their sacrifice. And again, we'll help them, which is great, which we need to do. But they're not asking us for anything other than to acknowledge their sufferings and their sacrifice. And some of them are, obviously, pastors are saying, hey, put a stop to this. But so let's see. My pastor Khan grew up in communist China and has shared some stories. Yeah. His family fled Russia. Okay. Yeah. And when I was in college, I was in Vienna, Austria, helping refugees who had crossed the Iron Curtain. One of them was from China, a lot of them from Eastern Europe. It was bad news. It was very bad news. But the church in China even grew through all that persecution and is now a strong church, as bad as China is, right? So I just thought I'd throw up some Bible verses here. Oops, I'm going to remove that and stop screen. I was getting good at this and I just flubbed. So these are some Bible verses that on persecution, and I think we all know them, but it's good to go over them again. Are we there? We are there. Okay, good. So 2 Timothy 3, 11 through 12. My persecutions and suffering that happened to me at Antioch and Iconium and Lystra, which persecutions I endured, yet from them all the Lord rescued me. Indeed, all who desire to live a godly life in Jesus Christ will be persecuted. Okay. And let's go just through a couple. John 15, 19 through 20. If you are of the world would love you as its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they keep my word, they will also keep yours. Okay. So, and it goes on. There's lots of other ones we can look at. This has 10. Actually, there's more than that. I couldn't quite find the one I wanted before, where it says, fear not what they can do to your body. But the body is just temporary. They can't hurt your soul. So, hey, see what you got. In China, they had underground Bible study, or is that North Korea? Either way, bless the people. I think it's both. So I think there's an underground church in a lot of different countries. But you can get more persecuted than in China and North Korea and in the Soviet Union and the communist bloc, like I saw. That was about as bad as it gets. And now in Nigeria, it's over the top bad, because they have people coming in all sorts of ways. It seems that these people relish in the violence. They're not content to just kill it's just horrible beheadings and machete attacks and burning all alive, all this kind of stuff. So what we can do here is expect the same type of thing. What makes us think that we're exempt from all this just because we're Christians in the United States of America? And I think the rumblings of that have started. It started probably a little while back, but now, again, we're faced with this situation where we have a communist mayor just got elected to the biggest city in the country, and a candidate that threatened to kill his political opponents, or dreamed of killing his political opponents. You might as well have threatened them one-handedly. And this will continue to grow. These things don't often start and then smolder out. You can pretty much tell what's starting now. And again, Michael talks about this a lot. We live in an assassination culture. We live in an increasingly violent culture where we have been told that our words are violent. When we talk about what we believe, when we share our biblical worldview, we're told that that's violence on other people, and therefore that justifies their physical violence against us. And that's going to continue to grow. It's pretty obvious. There's been 1,400, last year, or attacks, since 2018, something like that, which is a graphic I forgot to put up. But these things are growing, and attacks like we saw on the video, situations like we saw in the video, are increasing. And my wife and I were sitting in church a month ago after that Mormon church attack, and she confided in me afterwards. She was thinking, what would happen if someone came in with that kind of ill intent to harm us? And I told her, hey, there's like 5 or 6 Marines and cops outside. They have to get through them to get through us. But still, she said, the fact that I had to think about it, here I am in a worship service, and I have to think about this kind of thing. And then we realized this is what Christians have had to think about for 2,000 years. And we've had this little peaceful bubble that we've been in that may be about to burst, and we may be faced with, maybe it won't be as severe. It probably won't be as severe as Nigeria. What could be more severe, or even as severe as Nigeria, right? But that doesn't mean it won't be persecution. That doesn't mean it won't be trouble. And that's what we'll have to face, because we're Christians, and that's what God promises. We're followers of Jesus Christ, and the world does not like that. It doesn't like Jesus, and therefore Jesus said, a servant's not greater than his master. We're servants of his. He said, if they persecute me, they're going to persecute you. And it'll be a winnowing process, threshing process, right? We'll separate. This is how God will separate the wheat from the chaff, and he'll separate the sheep from the goats. This will be a strengthening of the church. The church is always strengthened through persecution. And the church right now is kind of surging in the United States. Charlie Kirk's assassination had a huge unintended effect in bringing people back to church, bringing people back to their faith. And Satan's not going to like that at all. And we've already seen what he's trying to do has been trying to do to quell that, to knock that down, to stop that. But I don't think it's going to stop. But I don't think Satan's going to stop either. And those enemies, those who hate Jesus, will not stop. So we'll see the more our faith surges because of that kind of trouble, the more Satan's going to come against us. So we can expect this kind of thing from the outside. Okay, we can expect outside threats. Next week, I'm going to kind of look at the other side of the coin and talk about the threats that are going to come from within the church, because we have to, as much as the Bible promises that we will have outside trouble, it also says we need to be aware of inside trouble that's come from within the church. And so that's what I want to talk about next week. But for now, just know that as Christians, as little Christs, and I don't shy away from the word Christian. And that's one other subject I'll talk about coming up is the word Christian versus a lot of people like to substitute things like that. A lot of Christians don't seem to like that word, but that's what we are. We're little Christ. We're followers of Christ, and we're his family, and we're each other's family. And those outside that family, a lot of times, do not like that we are, and we're having an effect. God is moving in our country. God is moving in the Western world. And Charlie Kirk's assassination was the spark that lit the powder keg. And so God is moving, and there will be resistance. And we will be targets of that resistance. Okay. So, and again, it's something that's been prayed for us for decades. Persecuted Christians have been praying for us that we would experience persecution. And again, in whatever form or severity it comes, it doesn't really matter. Like Peter and John, we need to rejoice that now we're going to be counted as worthy to suffer for Christ. Okay. The blessing, we finally get the blessing. Some blessing, right? But for years, Christians around the world have been persecuted, have been found worthy to be persecuted for the name of Christ. And for some reason, by the grace of God, we have not. And I think that's about to change. But we need to see it as a blessing, and we need to be prepared for it. It needs to be talked about from the pulpit. It needs to be talked about in small groups. It needs to be talked about on the dinner table. The conversations like my wife and I had after church. This is coming. And as Christians, we need to be ready for it. We need to pray for strength, for not only for ourselves, but it will make us conscious of all the sufferings of people around the world, Nigeria and other places. So out of curiosity, I will be talking about that soon. Revenge. Okay. That is something that we will be talking about. So, but we're out of time. And I will be on with Ben tomorrow. And so I will see you then. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the good comments. And again, if you're watching this on video later, share some more comments, because we do post this and we'd like to hear from you. What do you think about persecution of the church here and in the rest of the world? So thanks for listening, guys. I will see you tomorrow.